Back when I was in university, I used to take 6 classes every semester since I was pursuing a dual degree and wanted to finish everything within 4 years. The campus library stayed open until midnight, which was helpful. During that particular semester, I also had an internship, so I barely had any free time to keep up with my workload. I had 2 exams scheduled for the next day, so as soon as I finished my internship, I went straight to the library. The campus library was quite large. I planned to stay until midnight to prepare for my exams. By around 11, most people had already left, though a few were still there. I was seated at a table tucked between 2 bookshelves, which made the area feel more private and less distracting. At about 11, a man who looked like he was in his late 20s walked into the section. I was reviewing slides on my laptop when he said, "Excuse me," and asked if I happened to be taking a certain economics course, explaining that his professor was terrible and gave pop quizzes every day. I quickly looked back down at my laptop, debating whether I should move to another spot or just leave altogether. He responded by complimenting my eyes. That was when I started to seriously question whether he was even there to study, especially since he seemed much older than a typical student. I asked him the name of his economics professor. He hesitated before saying Professor Davis. That immediately raised a red flag. I went on to rate my professor and searched for anyone with the last name Davis at our school. Only one result appeared, and it was a calculus professor whose reviews were from years ago. At that point, I decided to get help. I stood up, feeling his eyes on me as I walked to the front desk and told the security worker that the man was making me uncomfortable and that I did not think he was a student. The guard came back with me and asked the man for his student. The guard then asked which dorm he lived in. The man clearly struggled to answer and eventually said he could not remember the name. That confirmed everything. The guard escorted him out of the library and later told me to be careful when heading back to my dorm. I thanked him, but I could not focus for the rest of the night. My mind kept replaying the situation. I exited the library the same way the guard had taken the man out earlier. He was not there at that moment, and I had no idea where he went. Late at night, especially from Monday to Wednesday, hardly anyone is outside. As I got closer to my dorm, I suddenly heard a clear sound of a shoe hitting the pavement behind me. I turned around but saw no one. Still, I was certain I heard footsteps. I started running, which in hindsight may not have been the best decision. The moment I picked up speed, I heard running behind me. I turned and saw the same man from the library sprinting toward me. He kept threatening me, telling me to stay quiet or he would kill me. I tried to call for help, but his hand muffled my voice. He then stood up and began dragging me by my throat away from the main walkway. I realized he was pulling me toward the wooded area near the dorms. Somehow, I managed to pull his hand away from my mouth, just long enough to scream again. 2 guys nearby heard me and came running toward us, shouting for him to stop. The 2 guys came over to me, asking if I was okay, but I could barely process anything. I was in complete shock. After a few moments, I broke down and started crying uncontrollably. They called campus police, and I tried my best to explain what had happened. We also returned to the library so the security guard could provide his description of the man, which matched mine. The police used library camera footage to get a clear image of his face. The picture was sent out to all students through emails, alerts, and the school website. That same night, someone anonymously reported seeing him at a late-night bar near campus. Police went to the location and arrested him. The trauma from that experience was overwhelming. Even now, I cannot fully describe how deeply it affected me. I can only imagine how much worse it could have been if things had turned out differently. We moved to a different town when I was 7 years old. Anything I remember from before that move feels like very early childhood, and most of those memories have faded or become unclear over time. This is one of those memories that never fully went away. I know this happened before I turned 7. If I had to estimate, I was probably 5 or maybe 6 years old. There was a small town library that my mom used to take my brothers and me to quite often. It was only a few blocks from our house. I remember one particular day when it was just my mom, my little brother, who was still a toddler, and me. We had started the day at the mall, most likely spending hours there, while my mom went shopping and we followed along. Every time we went to that mall, she would take us to the McDonald's inside so we could get ice cream cones. I clearly remember having ice cream that day because when we left the mall and headed to the library, I was still holding part of my cone. When we got to the library, there was a computer area for kids where my mom would let me sit and play games while she did her own thing. After a while, I got bored of the old computer games and decided to walk through the aisles in the children's section, searching for the I Spy books. The kids section was tucked away in the far corner of the library. As I wandered between the shelves, I suddenly heard a quiet piece behind me. I turned around, but I did not see anyone. I was facing the back wall where another shelf stood. Then I noticed half of a grown man's face peeking around the edge of the shelf. He smiled and said peekaboo. I remember laughing and not feeling any fear at all. He did it again. He hid behind the shelf and then popped his head out once more, saying peekaboo. I laughed again. Then he asked me what I was looking for. I told him I was trying to find the I Spy books. He said he could help me. He came closer, took my hand, and started guiding me through the aisles toward the section with books, starting with the letter I. Sure enough, there were several I Spy books lined up together. I picked my favorite one, the treasure hunt edition, and he suggested we sit down and look at it together. He led me to a table near a couple of the children's computers, and we began flipping through the pages. We spent quite a bit of time there. The one that I still remember the most clearly was when he asked who I had come to the library with. I told him I was there with my mom and my little brother. After a while, he mentioned that there was a playroom downstairs. At that age, I had no idea the library even had a downstairs area. He said we could take the book there. He led me to a door that went down to the basement. For context, that area is usually used for meetings and events for different groups. There actually is a small playroom down there for parents who bring their kids along. He brought me into that playroom. There were different toys scattered around, including a Lego table with pieces on it, and several chairs placed nearby. He set the I Spy book down on the Lego table. Looking back now, this is where everything started to feel wrong. He tried to get me to play with the toys, almost forcing me to stay engaged, and I began to feel uneasy. Around that same time, a voice came over the loudspeaker. A woman said, "Will Liam come to the front, please? Your mother is looking for you." As soon as that announcement played, the man walked over and turned off the lights. The room went completely dark. He said that now we were going to play hide and seek in the dark. That was the first moment I felt truly scared, and I started calling out for my mom. He kept telling me to be quiet. His voice grew louder as he moved closer to me in the darkness, until I could feel his hands on me. Somehow, I managed to break away and run past him. I rushed out of the room and sprinted down the dark hallway toward the stairs. As I ran up the steps, I had that familiar childhood fear of being chased in the dark, but it was far more intense because I truly believed he might grab me. I reached the main floor and ran straight to the front desk, shouting for my mom. She was already there with a group of librarians. I remember the relief on her face the moment she saw me. I told her that a man had taken me downstairs, and she completely panicked. The next thing I remember is police officers inside the library searching the building, but I never saw that man again. He must have left through another exit. I also remember talking to a woman, likely someone working with the police, who asked me careful and gentle questions about what had happened. I never spoke much about this experience with my mom afterward. It has always been too uncomfortable to revisit, and honestly, I prefer not to think about it. I worked at a local public library back when I was in my early 20s. It was my second job, and I usually took the night shift at least 3 times a week after finishing my main job. I would arrive at 6 in the evening and stay until closing time at 9. I was also responsible for locking up the building at the end of the night, but that did not mean I could leave right away. There was always a list of things I had to take care of first. I needed to shut down all the computers, tidy up the place, organize everything, restock the shelves with books and DVDs that had been returned during the day, and take out the trash. Only after all of that was done could I finally head home. One Friday night, right as closing time was getting close, most of the staff had already left. At that point, it was just me and one of the female librarians still inside. I made a couple of last-call announcements over the intercom to let the remaining visitors know we would be closing soon. While doing that, I was already starting to clean up, hoping to finish everything quickly so I could leave and enjoy the start of my weekend. As soon as the clock hit 9, the other employees said goodbye and left. I made the final announcement that the library was closed. The last 2 visitors packed up their belongings and walked out the door. Once I was sure no one else was inside, I locked the front entrance. I began straightening the chairs, pushing them neatly under the tables. After that, I started emptying the trash cans. When it was time to take the garbage outside to the dumpster along the side of the building, I unlocked the front door again and carried everything out. It was completely quiet outside. The library itself was tucked away, far from any busy streets. When I went back in, I locked the door behind me again. At that point, all that was left was putting away the returned books and DVDs. I picked up the 2 boxes and started with the DVDs since that section was smaller and easier to finish. It took about 5 to 10 minutes. While I was doing that, I was certain I heard a sound coming from one of the book aisles. I walked through the aisles to check and found an open book lying on the floor. It had clearly just fallen off the shelf. I picked it up and placed it back where it belonged, then paused for a moment, wondering how that could have happened. After that, I returned to my work. Once I finished with the DVDs, I grabbed the box of books and began shelving them one by one. They were arranged alphabetically, so I started with the A section. Everything was organized in the box to make the process easier. As I moved along the shelves, trying to get through it quickly so I could go home, I heard another noise nearby. That was twice within less than 20 minutes. That could not be a coincidence. I set the box down and walked through the aisles again, this time more alert. In another aisle, I found 2 books lying on the floor. That was when it hit me. Someone was still inside. I stepped out into the open area with the tables and called out, "Excuse me, the library is closed." At first, there was silence. Then I heard something from the far side of the building, coming from the children's section. I moved toward the sound, and as I got closer, it began to sound like some kind of animal growling. I could also hear books being thrown onto the floor. The noise was coming from one of the aisles. Gathering my nerve, I slowly peeked down the aisle. What I saw made my stomach drop. There was a woman wearing a nightgown, randomly pulling books off the shelves and tossing them while making these awful animal-like noises. I did not say a word. I turned around and ran straight to the office where the phone was. Back then, I did not have a cell phone. I locked the office door behind me and pulled down the blinds over the window. Then I called 911. I told them there was a woman inside the library who seemed very unwell and that they should send an ambulance. The operator asked if I had approached her, and I said no because she looked dangerous. When they asked if she was still in the same area, I lifted the blinds to check, and I screamed. She was standing right outside the glass, staring directly at me. Her pupils were so large that her eyes looked almost unreal. I told the operator she was right outside the office. The woman started pounding on the glass and shouting nonsense. She tried the door, but when it would not open, she turned around and sat in a chair facing the office. The operator told me to keep the blinds open and watch her. As she sat there, swaying slightly, it was obvious she was completely out of her mind on something. Soon, 2 police cars and an ambulance arrived at the library. The woman resisted and had to be handcuffed because she tried to fight the officers. Nothing she said made any sense at all. They eventually placed her in the back of the ambulance and took her away. I never found out what she had taken or how she managed to get inside. Maybe she slipped in while I was taking out the trash. Or maybe she had been hiding somewhere before I locked up. Either way, after that night, being alone in the library after closing never felt the same again.